You ever have one of those moments where reality just feels a little bit off? A little too strange, or maybe a little too perfect? Well, today we're going to dive into an idea that takes that feeling and cranks it all the way up to 11. It's called the simulation hypothesis.
I mean, what if everything you've ever known isn't real? Not in the way you think it is, anyway. What if this entire universe, and yeah, even you, are all just part of some massive, incredibly sophisticated program? And I don't mean that as a metaphor. I mean, literally.
So yeah, that's the core of the simulation hypothesis. And what's wild is that this idea has kind of jumped from the pages of science fiction right into some really serious discussions among actual physicists and philosophers. And the arguments for it, they're surprisingly compelling.
So that's the big, mind-bending question we're going to try and unpack in this explainer. We'll look at where this whole idea even came from, the main arguments for it, the major problems it runs into, and, what it could all possibly mean.
Okay, as wild as this all sounds, questioning whether reality is actually real, that's not a new thing. It's honestly one of the oldest human traditions out there. This doubt has been echoing through civilizations for, well, thousands of years.
And this doubt, it's really evolved over the centuries. You go way back to the 4th century BC, you've got the philosopher Zhuangzi. He famously dreams he's a butterfly, and when he wakes up, he's left wondering, am I a man who just dreamt I was a butterfly, or am I a butterfly now dreaming I'm a man? Then you fast forward to the 17th century, and René Descartes is imagining this evil demon that could be fooling all of his senses. And as our own tech started to grow, the theory grew with it, leading us right to the modern computational version of the whole argument. And that brings us right up to 2003, and a philosopher named Nick Bostrom. Now, he didn't just ask, what if? He completely reframed the whole thing as a statistical problem. He basically argued that if any civilization, anywhere, ever, gets to the point where they can run super realistic ancestor simulations, well, then a very strange and powerful logic just kicks right in.
And this right here, this is the heart of the modern hypothesis. It's not just a gut feeling or some sci-fi trope anymore. It's a logical argument, and it's called Bostrom's trilemma. It lays out 3 possibilities, and the kicker is, it claims one of them has to be true.
So here's the crucial point. It's this. Either civilizations like ours, well, they destroy themselves before they can ever create these kinds of simulations. That's option 1, extinction. Or maybe they get to that super advanced stage, but they just lose interest. Maybe they decide it's unethical, or maybe it's just boring to them. That's option 2, apathy. But, and here's the logical punch, if civilizations don't go extinct and they don't lose interest, then a third option becomes almost inevitable. They will create simulations, probably tons of them. And if that happens, the logic points straight to option 3.
And this really shows the statistical trap perfectly. Think about it. If there's just one base reality, but there are billions, maybe trillions of simulated realities, what are the odds that you, just a random conscious being, happen to be one of the original biological ones? The odds are just vanishingly small. From a purely statistical standpoint, you are almost certainly living inside one of those simulations.
Okay, so that's the philosophical side of the argument. But what about the physical world itself? Well, in a really fascinating twist, there are some clues from physics that suggest our universe has properties that look, well, suspiciously computational. This comes from one of the most profound ideas in modern physics, from the legendary physicist John Archibald Wheeler. He called it from bit. The idea is that all physical matter, all energy, actually comes from bit, from information. It suggests that at the most fundamental level, the universe isn't made of particles, it's made of bits of information, just like a computer program.
And this leads to a pretty mind-blowing comparison. I mean, we all know how a digital reality like a video game works, right? It's built from pixels and it runs at a certain frame rate. Well, some theories in physics suggest our universe might actually work the same way. That there could be a smallest possible unit of distance, it's called the Planck length, and it would basically act like a pixel of space.
And this image here shows exactly what that might look like. So instead of a smooth, continuous fabric of space-time, it could be more like a grid, a lattice. And if that's true, well, that could be a detectable signature, a clue that the rules of our universe are being computed rather than just, existing.
Okay, so far, the case for us living in a simulation seems pretty compelling, right? But the hypothesis is definitely not bulletproof. In fact, it faces some massive intellectual and physical challenges. So let's take a look at the cracks in the code, so to speak.
The counterarguments tend to fall into three big buckets. First, the sheer scale and computing power you'd need might just be physically impossible. Second, that whole statistical argument, it rests on a pretty shaky assumption about our place in the universe. And third, the whole idea creates a logical paradox that's really hard to escape from.
So, let's start with the hardware problem. As a lot of physicists have pointed out, a system can't perfectly simulate itself using its own physical laws. It just doesn't work. To simulate our universe, down to every single quantum particle, you would need a computer built from a reality that's even more complex and powerful than our own. I mean, where would you even build something like that?
Next up is the flaw in the statistics. That whole funnel argument we talked about. It assumes that we're a typical conscious observer, picked at random from the giant pool of all observers that will ever exist. But what if we're not? What if we're one of the very first intelligent species in the universe? If that's true, then there aren't any post-human civilizations out there yet to create all those simulations in the first place. And if that's the case, the whole statistical argument just kind of falls apart.
And this brings us to what might be the most dizzying problem of all, the infinite regress problem. Okay, so if our creators are also in a simulation, and their creators are in a simulation, where does it stop? It's that old turtles all the way down paradox. At some point, there has to be a base reality that isn't simulated. Otherwise, the whole logical house of cards just collapses.
So what we have here are powerful arguments on both sides. On one hand, you've got this really compelling statistical case, but on the other, there are these enormous physical and logical hurdles. So where does that leave us? How are we supposed to actually think about all this? You know, it's interesting. The guy who framed this whole modern argument, Nick Bostrom, he actually concludes that with what we know right now, we can't really favor any one of the three possibilities. He suggests we should just assign a roughly equal probability to each one. So that's about a 1 in 3 chance we all go extinct, a 1 in 3 chance advanced life just isn't interested in simulating us, and a 1 in 3 chance that we are, in fact, living in a simulation.
So we're left in this state of really profound uncertainty. The world you're looking at right now could be the bedrock of all existence. Or it could be the most elaborate, convincing, and beautiful illusion ever programmed. The simple truth is, we just don't know for sure. But let's just bring this back down to earth for a second. Forget all the physics and the philosophy. If you found out tomorrow, with 100% certainty, that this was all a simulation, would anything actually change for you?
I mean, think about it. Whether the light hitting your eye is from a real star or just a rendered one, that feeling of wonder is still yours. Whether love is a chemical reaction or some complex algorithm, the feeling is just as real, just as profound. The joy, the sorrow, the choices you make, that's still the substance of your life. Your story is still your story.
So, what do you think? Are we the real deal? Or are we all living inside the ultimate program? I'd love to hear your theory down in the comments. And hey, if you enjoyed diving into deep ideas like this, make sure to subscribe for more.